Jakarta, July 2008. The city is a living, breathing beast, its 10 million souls pulsing through a vibrant chaos, vendors shouting over sizzling woks, scooters darting through a cacophony of horns, skyscrapers slicing through a haze of tropical heat. Indonesia is shrouded in grief, reeling from a national tragedy that has left flags at half-mast and families clinging to routine for solace. Mothers pack schoolbags with fresh notebooks, markets hum with back-to-school sales, and the air carries a somber but stubborn rhythm of life. Then, on July 12th, the world splits apart. In a littered alley near Pasar Mingu, East Jakarta's frenetic market, a street vendor spots a suitcase, a backpack, and a plastic bag, discarded like the remnants of a hasty escape. Hoping for knockoff gadgets or forgotten clothes, he pries them open. What he finds is a plunge into horror. 7 pieces of a human body, arms, legs, torso, head, some stabbed through with a crowbar. Others sealed in plastic-like cuts from a slaughterhouse. DNA tests named the victim, Harry Santoso, a 40-year-old sales manager, the kind of man who'd share a cigarette and ask about your kids. No enemies, no dark past. Indonesia, a sprawling nation of 240 million across 17,000 islands, is about to meet Rian Jonang, a killer so charismatic he seduced his prey. So meticulous he carved flesh with a sculptor's precision, and so shameless he grinned through confessions, turning a country's sorrow into a collective scream. As Maureen Callahan might write, Rian wasn't a murderer, he was a conjurer of nightmares, weaving charm and carnage into a tapestry of terror that held us all captive. The investigation surges like a tsunami. Harry's bank account shows withdrawals after his death, and grainy ATM footage catches Noval, Rian's boyfriend, pocketing cash with Harry's card like it's pocket change. Police drag Noval in, and he crumbles under questioning, spilling Rian's name like a confession at a revival. On July 15, 2008, Rian was nabbed in East Depok, a tranquil suburb where the worst crime is a kid swiping mangoes. Cops brace for a single murder, perhaps a lover's spec gone wrong. But the evidence paints a darker picture. Harry's body parts, sliced with surgical clarity, whisper of a killer who's not just killed but mastered the craft. Rian's demeanor in custody is a gut punch. He's not trembling or defiant, he's cheerful, swapping small talk with officers, his boyish grin disarming even the grizzled veterans. He wasn't hiding his sins, Callahan might say. He was showcasing them, a showman taunting his audience. Then, he unleashes a bombshell. 6 more murders. Days later, the count hits 11. A raid on his father's house in Jombang, East Java, 400 miles from Jakarta's neon sprawl, uncovers a scene that burns into Indonesia's soul. 11 bodies buried in the backyard, a grotesque mosaic of men, one woman named Nanak Dadi, and her 3-year-old daughter, Sylvia. The nation doesn't just flinch at fractures, its sense of safety crumbling like ash. Rian's story begins in 1978, in a Jombang home where fear was the foundation and love a distant rumor. His mother, Kasiatin, was a storm of cruelty, her fists and venom aimed at Rian from his first steps. Each blow, each vicious word, carved a hatred for women into his psyche, a wound that festered with time. His father, a fleeting shadow, was either laboring in far-off fields or willfully blind, leaving Rian to face the tempest alone. By 1995, at 17, Rian's pain erupted like a volcano. In a rage that rattled the neighborhood, he chased Kasiatin through their home with a kitchen knife, his screams of vengeance echoing down dirt roads. Neighbors summoned police, and Rian was hospitalized for 2 weeks, diagnosed with severe psychological trauma. He emerged hollowed out, silent, withdrawn, his fury now a smoldering ember. New passions were makeup, dancing, and a growing attraction to men. Jakarta's pulsating gay nightlife beckoned like a beacon, and Rian dove in headfirst. Clubs like Moonlight, Stardust, and Red Square were his canvas glittering. Chaotic, a world where he could shed his past. Rian didn't want to fit in. He wanted to shine, to drape himself in Versace, sip martinis in VIP booths, and live like a celebrity. But his gigs waiter, club promoter, occasional hustler barely covered a meal. Theft plugged the holes, then robbery, then murder. Rian didn't kill for cash alone. Callahan might write, he killed to rewrite his story, to trade a battered boy for a deity forged in blood and ambition. Harry Santoso's murder is Rian's method distilled to its dark essence. In early 2008, Rian spotted the 40-year-old sales manager at a bar, drawn to his warm laugh and the flash of a gold Rolex. He invited Harry to his apartment, where the night began with whiskey, hip-hop, and easy banter. Then, a spark of jealousy ignited. Harry tossed a playful quip about Noval, Rian's boyfriend, and Rian's charm dissolved into rage. He grabbed a knife, stabbing Harry in a frenzy, then seized a crowbar and crushed his skull. Rian worked in his dimly lit apartment for hours, dismembering Harry into 7 pieces with a chilling focus. He scattered the parts across Jakarta Pasar Mingu's alleys, roadside ditches, a stagnant canal, each drop a chess move to dodge the law. Noval, disturbingly devoted, didn't blink. He joined Rian in burning through Harry's cash on a hedonistic blow of drugs, dancers, champagne, a party that mocked the dead. It wasn't just a killing, Callahan would say it was a sacrament, Rian anointing himself emperor of his orc kingdom. The other victims followed a grim choreography, each murder a dark reprise. With his flirtatious grin and effortless charm, Rian haunted Jakarta's nightlife, bars, clubs, bathhouses, hunting men with wallets or status. He'd reel them in with compliments, free drinks, and promises of a night to remember. At his apartment, the mask fell, usually a crowbar to the head, sometimes a knife to the throat. He'd strip them of cash, watches, phones, anything he could pawn. Bodies went to his father's backyard in Jombang, buried under the cover of darkness, passed off as trash runs. Neighbors grumbled about the stench, the late-night shoveling. But rural Java isn't a place for nosy questions. Nanak Dadi and her toddler, Sylvia, were a brutal exception. Nanak, a generous woman who'd once cooked Rian homemade rendang and treated him like family, had jewelry that sparkled too brightly. In 2008, Rian visited her home, his greed outweighing her warmth. He bludgeoned Nanak with a crowbar, then turned on Sylvia, just 3, to silence her cries. He buried them together, mother and child, in a shallow grave, their deaths a chilling footnote in his rampage. Evil doesn't pause for innocence, Callahan might write. It devours whoever's in its path, man, woman, child, and calls it triumph. The police had chances to stop Rian, but they fumbled every time. In 2007, a victim named Aldo was found in a sugarcane field, his body so mangled it took dental records to identify him. 3 men came at, David and Mamang were arrested on paper-thin evidence, a vague witness and their misfortune of living nearby, under torture. They confessed, their stories a jumbled mess of contradictions. They were convicted and jailed, their families' pleas drowned out by a system desperate for results. When Rian confessed to Aldo's murder in 2008, the truth hit like a sledgehammer. The wrongful convictions exposed a justice system rotting from within, undertrained officers, corrupt prosecutors, and a culture that prized closed cases over evidence. A 2006 University of Indonesia study revealed 60% of murder convictions relied on coerced confessions, a statistic criminologists hurled at the police like a Molotov cocktail. Families of the accused marched in Jakarta, Surabaya, and Bandung, waving photos of their loved ones, demanding exoneration. The system offered only silence, leaving wounds that still fester. When justice is a sham, Callahan would argue, it doesn't just free monsters, it buries the innocent and calls it order. Rian's trial in Depok was a national obsession, a circus that gripped Indonesia like a fever. Starting in late 2008, it packed courtrooms with reporters scribbling furiously, victims' families weeping, and gawkers craving a glimpse of the country's new boogeyman. On April 6, 2009, Rian was sentenced to death, but he stole the spotlight. Gone was the cocky killer. In his place was a pious performer, swathed in white Muslim attire, clutching prayer beads, and quoting the Quran with a preacher's fervor. He floated plans for a religious album and an autobiography, earning the nickname the singing serial killer. Rumors of an engagement to a female inmate, Annie Waya, flared briefly but collapsed under scrutiny. Rian's theatrics weren't just bravado, they were a calculated bid to soften his image, maybe even delay the news. Today, he languishes on death row in Gondang Sinander, West Java, his execution stalled by Indonesia's labyrinthine legal system, which demands exhaustive appeals and reviews. Rian's not counting days to death. Callahan might say he's scripting his legend, a narcissist addicted to the final curtain call. Indonesia was spellbound, unable to look away. The media churned out a relentless deluge, tabloid splash graphic crime scene photos. TV shows ran 24/7 specials with grim-faced hosts, and radio stations debated Rian's psyche into the early hours. Nanak and Sylvia's murders struck deepest, igniting grief-soaked protests in Jakarta, Surabaya, Bonding, and beyond. Mothers clutched photos of the slain toddler, chanting for swift executions, while clerics thundered about moral decay from mosque loudspeakers. Rian's Jombang home became a morbid landmark, drawing thousands. Some snapped selfies near the graves, others left flowers or spat curses. Homophobia fueled the frenzy, with pundits, imams, and talk show callers branding Rian a gay monster, tying his crimes to his sexuality in a country where being queer can mean ostracism, imprisonment, or worse. Social media erupted with conspiracies. Satanic cults, a secret accomplice, even claims Rian was a government pawn to distract from soaring rice prices or political scandals. Rian's parents faced a crucible. How do you miss 11 bodies buried at home? Kasiatin and her husband, often away for migrant work in Malaysia, swore they rarely visited the Jombang house and saw nothing. Neighbors scoffed, recalling late-night noises, heavy bags, and Rian's cryptic visits with shovels and sacks. No charges stuck, but suspicion clung like damp rot. Rian didn't just kill, Callahan would note. He sparked a reckoning, forcing Indonesia to confront its fears of family, faith, and the monsters we let slip through. The case didn't just dominate headlines, it reshaped Indonesia's soul. Families of missing persons flooded police stations, clutching faded photos, desperate to know if their loved ones were among Rian's victims. Community watch groups sprang up in Jakarta's suburbs, fueled by paranoia that another killer might be lurking. The murders sparked debates that rippled through every layer of society about parenting, policing, poverty, and the seductive pull of Jakarta's nightlife. Editorials questioned how a boy from a sleepy town became a national nightmare, with some blaming Kasiatin's abuse, others pointing to the city's hedonistic underbelly, and others still to a culture that stigmatized Rian's sexuality while ignoring his descent into darkness. Criminologists weighed in, citing a 2007 report that Indonesia's murder clearance rate lagged at 40%, hampered by outdated forensics, underfunded precincts, and overstretched officers. The Aldo case became a rallying cry for reform, with activists demanding better training, independent oversight, and an end to torture-based confessions. Yet change crawled, and Rian's shadow loomed large, a grim reminder of what happens when systems fail and monsters thrive. Rian didn't just take lives, Callahan might write. He exposed the fractures in Indonesia's foundation, fractures we're still too frightened to repair. Rian's crimes left scars far beyond the body count. The families of his victims grappled with a grief that felt infinite. Parents who never see their sons again, a community mourning Nanak's warmth and Sylvia's stolen future. The wrongful convictions of Kamat, David, and Mamang added another layer of tragedy, with their families fighting for exoneration against a system that refused to admit its mistakes. Public trust in law enforcement plummeted, with a 2009 Compass poll showing only 30% of Indonesians believed police could solve major crimes. Rian's case became a cultural touchstone, referenced in songs, documentaries, and a 2010 TV movie, The Jombang Nightmare, that drew 15 million viewers. His Jombang home, briefly a tourist trap, was later abandoned, its yard overgrown, a silent monument to the horrors it hid. The case also forced Indonesia to confront its treatment of marginalized groups, with some activists arguing that Rian's sexuality, demonized by media and clerics, was a distraction from deeper issues: poverty, abuse, and a justice system that failed at every turn. Rian wasn't just a killer, Callahan might argue. He was a mirror, reflecting a society that creates its monsters, then recoils at the sight. The ripple effects of Rian's crimes stretched into Indonesia's institutions and psyche. Police academies introduced new training modules on serial killer profiling, spurred by criminologists who pointed to Rian's case as a textbook failure of detection. Universities launched studies on the psychology of serial killers, with Rian's name invoked alongside global infamy like Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer. Activists used the Aldo case to push for judicial reforms, securing a 2010 law mandating independent reviews of torture-based convictions, though implementation lagged. The case even influenced pop culture, with crime novels and podcasts dissecting Rian's motives, charm, and the society that failed to stop him. Yet for all the noise, the wounds remained raw. Victims' families formed support groups, meeting monthly in Jakarta to share their grief and demand accountability. The Jombang community, scarred by its unwitting role, erected a small memorial for Nanak and Sylvia, a quiet gesture in a town forever changed. Rian's legacy isn't just death, Callahan might write. It's the questions he left behind about how we raise our children, how we police our streets, and how we face the monsters we've made. Rian Jonang wasn't born a predator, but his path was forged in fire, a childhood of unrelenting abuse, a ravenous hunger for a life beyond his grasp, and a psyche wired for cruelty turned him into Indonesia's deadliest killer. His 11 murders, men seduced and slaughtered, a woman and child killed for trinkets, were a manifesto of rage, greed, and entitlement, a defiant scream at a world he felt owed him everything. The case peeled back Indonesia's skin, a justice system that jailed the innocent, police who chased headlines over truth, and a society wrestling with its prejudices, from homophobia to blind faith in authority. As Callahan might put it, Rian Jonang didn't just kill 11 people. He held a mirror to Indonesia's soul, fractured, frightened, and still bleeding in the dark.